TVC Communications. Following is Dr. Peter Bankole. Dr. Peter Bankole is the Chief Operating Officer for Pan-African University. Then, just close to me is Mrs. Kemi Adewale. She is the founder and CEO, ProTicket Consult. Of course, I'm Franklin. Thank you. All right, so today, sit back and relax, and I hope we'll leave with so much more. So we are talking about attracting foreign direct investment through good corporate governance. So how do we put our business in such a structure that what we have is good sale for investors all around the world? So we'll start from Mrs. Kemi. Please, can you give us an overview of what a foreign direct investment really is?
Good afternoon, everybody. Foreign direct investments are, or FDIs as they're called, are investments made by investors in another country. So basically, it's an inflow of funds into a business in another country. And they're typically long-term players. They're in the business for the long term, as opposed to foreign portfolio investors who just sort of come in for short-term investments. Now, because it is an investment from someone, it's not a donation. I think that's very important to note, that it's not a donation, it's an investment. So if it's an investment, that suggests that the investor is expecting to get some profit, at least some return on his investment. And because someone has injected funds into business across geographies, the level of due diligence and the level of scrutiny is usually very high, because they expect, a very high standard from the host country and from the business they've invested in. And a lot of times, when we talk about Nigeria, sometimes the foreign investor, the FDI, is holding you to standards that they're used to. And sometimes those standards are actually higher than the standards that, the host country may be used to. So, in very short definition, FDIs are foreign direct investments, are basically injection into a business, injection of funds into a business, usually from another location or another country.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we've taken something very essential from what she said. So she talked about that investment must be substantial, and that investment is not a donation. So it's something that when you get it, you have to protect it and make sure that you what get it for. So you also mentioned about regulation, and that the regulation is deeper or stronger than the local regulation that the businesses here are familiar with. So it means that you have to learn to be able to function at the level of the foreign regulators that has given you money through such an investment. Thank you very much, Ma. So let's elaborate more on the conversation. So Mrs. Victoria, can you please help us to understand what good corporate governance really means? What does it mean?
Okay. I will start by just explaining what corporate governance is in a very simple term. Corporate governance, without making it complicated, and I'll use illustrations because I like telling stories. It's a simple set of principles that companies use to manage themselves in a responsible, transparent, and accountable manner. So if you think of TAR, T-A-R, transparent, accountable, and responsible manner, it's just a set of principles. Now there's corporate governance and there's good corporate governance, and I'll go into all of that. But let's assume there's a car, just so that you don't forget this when you're thinking of corporate governance. A car has 4 tires, right? The 2 in front and the 2 at the back. Think of corporate governance as the middle of the car, everything in the car, right? Whilst, this is an entire company, corporate governance is in the middle. There are certain relationships that help you have good corporate governance, and those key relationships are important. So Think of the first tire in front as number one, management of the company. The second tire in front, think of the board of directors. The tire at the back, think about shareholders or investors, those who have put money in the company. And the tire right at the back, again, think about other stakeholders. There are many stakeholders involved when you have a company, whilst corporate governance is right there in the middle. Now, those relationships are very important to manage. And for you to have very good corporate governance, you need to be able to manage all those relationships. So you can manage a car. When one tire is gone, what happens? The vehicle is at risk, right? That's the way you should see corporate governance. Once the relationships are not good or they don't work well together, then you don't have a good company. You don't have good corporate governance. There are also some other elements, right? Like cars have parts. There are parts in the vehicle. So there are some things that are very, very important as well for you to have good corporate governance. And I would say, I think I have an acronym for that. It's TRIFC, TRIFC. The T there is for transparency. For there to be good corporate governance in any company, there has to be transparency. You know, if you go to a company's website, for instance, and you can't really find any information, there's probably no good corporate governance in that company, right? They are hiding something, then they don't have very strong, good corporate governance. The R there is for responsibility. The management of the company, the board, and everyone in that company has to take responsibility for their actions. So if anything happens, they have to be accountable, you know, to stakeholders. That's the R. The I in there is independence. There should be separation of independence between management and the board of directors. The moment there's conflict of interest, it's someone's uncle, someone's brother, that's the chairman, and then their father is the CEO, and then the other one is the son, and everybody is the same. It's one and the same thing. Then you may not really have, you're just, the decision is still coming from one person. And so those are the sort of elements you look out for: transparency, responsibility, independence. Then you have F, fairness. The company, its management, board of directors need to be fair to not just shareholders, but they need to be fair to employees, suppliers, vendors. They need to treat everybody equitably in terms of ethically. And the last one is compliance, C. They must comply with rules and regulations and laws of the land. If that company doesn't do, even if you're a startup, right, and you're not making money yet, but you don't file your account, then you're not compliant. How will someone want to invest in you? Or they go to the CAC and they check you up and they cannot see anything about your company. Those are the sort of things that would tell an investor that, you know, this is a company that doesn't have strong, good corporate governance. So these are sort of the elements, the parts of that vehicle of corporate governance that are necessary for any company to say, look, I have very good corporate governance.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Wow. I'm sure we picked a lot from what she said. So it's simply saying that these are systems through which companies are directed and managed for the interest of the shareholders and other stakeholders. So it's very important. Thank you very much, Ma. Dr. Peter, please, can you give a link to foreign direct investment and good corporate governance? Do they have a link?
Okay, of course, they do have a link. And I'm going to just flow on this, your tri-football club. Because when I'm seeing FC, it's like football club. Okay. But I'm going to pick on the compliance. And I'm going to, just like you, I like to use stories. I have young people that are entrepreneurs starting off in regular businesses, right? And one of them is Goke Balogun. Goke Balogun is the co-founder of So Fresh. So maybe you have seen So Fresh. Now, because of corporate governance, he was able to move within a few years from 2 to 12 outlets. And what happened? He wasn't the only person that these foreign investors came to look at. I have a big pool of them. And at the end, when they chose him, I asked this gentleman the question, why did you choose him over others? And he said, you know, this guy is a compliance freak. That every single thing he asked for, that it was there. It wasn't even about audited account. It wasn't about, you know, the big ticket item. He said there was one levy of 100 naira. Levy. And this guy opened this thing and showed it to him. He said, what? 100 naira levy. I could have paid it from my pocket and forget about it. But that's what compliance is all about. And that's what the foreign direct investor is looking for. How well are you able to comply very well? Because they are at risk when they put their money into your business. And then, all of a sudden, they realize that it's too late. And so, for me, that link between foreign direct investment and good corporate governance is precisely doing what is expected. Again, making sure that it is not you and your wife and your brother-in-law and your cousin and you are the one driving. No, because that is already a red flag. And you see, when we talk about these things, let's not even limit them to for profits. I'm currently writing a book, and I'm on the chapter where I'm talking about non-profits. And I called about 4 or 5 of my ex-students that are doing fairly well, and I'm saying, how come you are doing well? Yeah. And you can check out their name. One is Irede Foundation. Irede Foundation is the one that has the limbs, provides prosthetics for young children between 0 and 18 years. And this lady, not only does he, in fact, she has the best corporate governance system that I have seen for non-profits. Her audited account, she has it every year, but she puts it on our website. How more transparent can you be? And so, because of that, in fact, she was telling me that last week, her husband went somewhere in Abuja, and they said, oh, this is the husband of that Irede Foundation. They are credible. You can trust them. That is because all the elements of corporate governance. Of course, she has a board of trustees, and she has advisory board. They serve 2 different purposes. But she has all of them. And the one that blew me, she said, I can't increase my salary. I'm responsible to the BOT. And there. So when I want to put money as an investor, I know that I am safe because this person is governed by good corporate practice.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much. I think please go ahead.
I was going to say they're so inextricably linked. They're like 5 and 6. Yeah. There's the adage that says, behind every successful man, there's a woman. Just flip it. Behind every successful business that has gotten investment, there's corporate governance.
Thank you very much. So let's go deeper. We live in a continent where leadership is very important, right? Leadership, we heard the quote that says that everything rises and falls on leadership, right? So in Africa, we are talking about inventors, creatives, startups. So it means that someone is leading. There's a promoter somewhere who is championing that cause, who has that dream. So do you think, Madam Kemi, do you think leadership will play a role in ensuring good corporate governance?
Long answer, short, yes. And I say this because what is a leader? A leader is a person leading people. A leader is a person that spurs people to action. A leader is somebody that has a followership. You have people looking to you, looking at your actions. And there's that very important adage or quote that says, a fish rots from the head. So, what is a leader? A leader is someone very, very important, somebody who's responsible for the culture of the company. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions here. What kind of leader are you? The kind of leader that a company has will determine the culture, the leadership, what the followers do. Now, in your business, are you transparent? What do you actually do? What you say you do, is that what you do? And the people who follow you and who are supposed to respect you and you're spurring into action, what kind of action? Good, bad, ugly, unethical things? And then what kind of business are you building? A sustainable business? Or are you saying one thing out there and you're actually doing another thing? What kind of goals do you have in place? What kind of policies do you have in place? As a company, are you doing what you say you're doing? and what it appears that you're doing. Are they one and the same? And you see, when you want to attract foreign investors, there's going to be a level of due diligence. That level of due diligence is going to happen before they even come and visit your company, before there's a physical meeting. Who are they going to find out from? There's something called intelligence. They're going to find out from other market players, regulators, the members of staff in the company, their families. They're going to get a lot of information about you, the leader, and the company. And especially for a small business or a startup, it's important to talk about the brand, the perception of the promoters and the business and your associates. So if we perceive the owner in a particular way, it's very difficult to detach that from the business. So it's very important. What are your goals, even long-term goals? Do you have policies in place? Do you have sustainability policies in place? Economic, social, what are your governance policies? And it's not okay to just have your policies in place. Do you actually follow them? Are you a disciplined leader? Do you follow them? Are you complying? So it's not all right that, maybe there's an audit and then they bring people and then you say, oh, we have all these policies in place. Fine, good. Then you're making profit. At what cost? The cost to your staff, cost to the environment. So leadership is key, because that's who everybody sees and everybody follows the leader. So leadership is actually really, really key.
Thank you very, very much. So I've heard this quote that says, that talks about leadership. Actually, if you're a leader and you're leading a business, because the dream is actually yours, most times is the person's dream, right? So but how you go about, inspiring people who you are leading is very important. So it tells the outside world where you're headed to. If you are leading and what we are saying is not what you are saying something else, and your steps are different from what you are saying, then we can't trust such a leader. So Africa sits on a very large population, 16.72 million people. That is a large market. So how do you think, Mrs. Victoria, how do you think we could leverage on that, to enshrine good corporate governance in our businesses, so that we can sell the right product to our people, we can have this right structure to attract these funds and other things that it comes with?
Okay. I'll use this example of my recent trip. So I was in Silicon Valley for 2 weeks, just learning how what makes VCs tick, right? If they want to fund businesses and startups. And so I was speaking to a particular VC and I said, what's happening? Why aren't you funding African startups? I mean, I was basically pitching Nigeria to this VC. And the person said, look, you have great ideas. You have brilliant ideas coming from Africa. However, even when due diligence is done from where they have done it, right? They still need people in Nigeria with strong structures to vouch for those startups before they can invest. So basically they were telling me, look, I will invest in that company if I can get an African investor that would put money, because if an African investor will put money, at least it gives me some confidence that they've done their homework and they've done, so I can then put some money. At least I can get some information from that investor, a credible investor who, has invested in other startups before and things like that. Now, they're saying that because different venture capitalists have different ways in which they do their due diligence if they want to invest in a startup, right? And so to attract foreign direct investment, basically they were telling me have strong governance, because let's use an example. If you want to get a startup and you have a strong person on your, if it's an NGO, on your board, or even if it's an advisory board you started with, because some people think, oh, we're still small, we can't afford to have a board. Boards are for PLCs and large public companies. No, a good sign is start with an advisory board with credible people, very good caliber, who can add value to your business, such that if a foreign direct investment sees their profile, they can say, okay, if this person can be on your board, right? It means the fact that you even have a board and the fact that you have credible people on the board, it tells a lot about your company, right? So starting from things like that, just having an advisory board that you are accountable to, those things help, right? It's a matter of corporate governance is framework. Once you put it in place, it's like a parent. Once you have rules, this is what a timetable. You're having rice today, Monday, you're having beans tomorrow, Tuesday. You already know that this is a timetable. So if the parent isn't around, you still are going to have rice today, beans tomorrow. That's the way it is. The Yoruba adage that says, "Aisinle olongbo lomu eku shako." Now, eku that is shakoing, let me interpret for those who don't understand it, right? When the cat is not around, that's when the mice comes out to play and prance around, right? the mice comes out and does this, right? Now, if the leader has put those structures in place, the mice cannot booga anyhow because he knows that the cat has probably set a trap somewhere, and those are the frameworks that we are talking about. Those things will be in place. So there's no way, since they are principles, the moment they are put in place, it helps. It doesn't just help the credibility of the business. It helps the business itself remain sustainable and profitable in the long run. That's why we're enforcing and saying, look, good corporate governance it's a given. If you really want this foreign direct investment, don't wait until you want the funding. Start doing it now. Start taking those baby steps. If you're a startup or an entrepreneur, start putting those things in place to ensure by the time you want to then ask for funding, it's going to be easy. You need to be able to show something, some track record that you have done some of these things. And yes, that would help.
Thank you very much. So some of us who are here, who probably, or who are watching us, you don't have a board, please, you need to put that together. There are credible people that you just have to have on your board if you are looking to have a sustainable business. Whether you're attracting investors or not, but if you're looking to be here tomorrow, you need to have a structure. And one of those structures is to have a good board and a good people on your board. So, Doctor, how, we live in Africa, and corruption is a big factor, So we heard about businesses who have come to Nigeria and they couldn't stay because they couldn't understand the way we do our business. It's different from how others do their business. And so I watched the Vodafone CEO when he was retiring. He said his greatest mistake is not investing in Nigeria. Amen. So it means there was something. So he talks about a little bit about their experience, and they have to run away because it wasn't the way they know business environment to be. So what do you think about corruption? How do we...
Let nobody deceive you. Corruption is across the world. It depends on the way you want to look at it.
Okay.
But what countries have done is to put in place systems that exposes it and penalizes it. That's the reality. So the difference between so-called us, whether you call it Africa or whatever, or I will do it more broadly, emerging economies, is that we have not been bold enough to be able to define clearly what happens if you go the wrong route. Now, let's start from taxes. Government's supposed to take taxes from companies and everything. Because you make it so opaque, then I can negotiate my way out, and you say that's Nigerian. It's not true. It's because we, as the regulator, as government, have not been very transparent enough to say this is what you pay. This is what you are entitled to, and all of that. Once everybody understands that, there's clarity. And then it becomes very difficult. You can't ask money from me because I know how much I'm supposed to pay.
That's true.
And once I know, I do my calculations, everything is inside my cost of a product. And that's the end. Now, so transparency is very key. Again, I like the way you put it as TAR. Me, I will reverse it and call it rat. It's better. So the first thing is we must all take responsibility. Whether we as government or regulators or whatever takes responsibility to do the right thing. And then we that were supposed to be making those payments, we also do the right thing. And then we say to ourselves, if we are not doing the right, if we are doing the right thing, and somebody beside us is not doing the right thing, we expose that person. In fact, there's one particular institution that I visited last month. And as they were in their first year, they said they have to sign a code of conduct that after, I think they must do this and think about it for like 6 months. After 6 months, they will sign whether in all the exams they will do, whether they should invigilate them or not. And then they said in 7, 8 years, only one said invigilate us. The rest, they said don't. But part of the code is that if I see anybody cheating, I will be the whistleblower. Did you get the point?
Yes, sir.
So it's self-policing, and guess what? Yeah. Now, they get used to that, so that when you go into the real world, can you imagine that I will not commit, but if you commit I will whistleblow. And that's the point. So corruption can be dealt with, but we must both take responsibility.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. So we as businesses in this continent, so we need to decide to be responsible for our own environment and our own business, because our business is in this environment. So if we have a better environment, then we'll have a better business, right? So let's go further into what we'll have. Africa has about 1.4 billion people, so it's a large market, right? A big market, and of course our GDP is about $3.1 trillion dollars. So what do we do to entrench, or what do you think government can help us do to continue to attract these investors?
Okay, I think government is doing a bit already, even though we want more. You know, we're Oliver Twist, we want more. We're not yet where we're supposed to be when it comes to startups, despite startups accounting for a huge proportion, nearly 50% of our GDP. Startups account for, and the employment as well that MSMEs and SMEs bring to Nigeria is nearly, I think, over 90% right now. So we contribute, when it comes to entrepreneurs, startups, contribute quite a lot to the economy. And so the things that I've seen that government has done so far, which people need to embrace, even though this may have not been fully implemented, for instance, the startup bill that was passed, that's a good thing. It's yet to be implemented, you know. However, the startup bill has some very interesting things. I was looking it up. It was only October 2022 it was passed into the Startup Act. And it was brought about to help put together a good environment for startups. So incentives, for instance, is part of this startup bill, where if you have a label, a special label called a startup label, you will be exempted from certain taxes, you have certain incentives, you have access to certain funds from the government, and things like that. So these are some of the things. And it's not just, I mean, Nigeria is late to the game. Countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, they've all adopted things like this, and we're just, you know, getting to it last year. So it's yet to be fully implemented, but it has been passed, you know, into law, and the Startup Act is there. So for entrepreneurs and startups, let's look this up. Let's see how we can begin to apply for this special startup label, right? And let's begin to take advantage of it. Also, the Africa Free Trade Continental, that's also another thing that the government, I mean, it's African Union, but, you know, we're all pushing it and, you know, ensuring this act and this benefits everybody. Once there's free trade amongst us in Africa, there's no way in funding would not come, because that way it exposes not just, you know, Nigeria to not just West African countries, the North, the South, all of Africa, I beg your pardon, will be exposed. And the moment we are open for trade that way, foreign investments will just flow. It will flow between African countries, and it will also flow, the ripple effect, with countries outside of Africa as well. So there are some things that are already being done. We just need to ensure we embrace them.
Thank you so much. Manakemi, I want to ask you, do you think there's anything government can do to help us entrench corporate governance in businesses, maybe from day one? Is there anything they can do to help startups to have this as part of their structure from beginning.
Well, I just want to pick up from what Doctor said.
Okay.
When we talk about governments and governance, we tend to think the responsibility lies with government. The truth of the matter is that governance and governments and governance, whatever you want to call it, is a two-way street. So government will put in place, they'll formulate policies, they will attempt to implement it, and attempt to execute sound and effective policies. But the truth of the matter is that it's a two-way street. So governments can try all they want, but then again, before the I don't know whether to say the followers of government, the people who are being led by government, before they can actually play their part, government has to play their part first.
Yeah.
And in doing that, governments should ensure that there's transparency. Transparency of what the policies are, transparency on, how you're going to implement those policies that, you're formulated. And, Doctor already alluded to the fact that if there are no sanctions, if there's a transparent environment and you know what the sanctions will be. So a legal system, a transparent legal system. Now, another thing that governments are supposed to ensure that they do is that sometimes their inactions also spooks the environment. It's not only when they do things, sometimes not doing things is even worse than doing things. Now, what that does is that it affects security, it affects, foreign investors like a stable environment.
Yeah, they do.
So if you keep changing policies or they're not quite sure of the policy, it affects exchange rates. And if you want to bring money into a country to invest, you need to have a stable environment for the operations, of the company that you're investing in. So there's a lot for governments to do. And I want to talk about 54 African countries on the continent, and we're operating in silos. We need to stop that. I mean, we do some things together. That's silos mentality. That's something that we need to have collaborations. We need to have alliances and collaborations that work. Collaborations that are devoid of, politics.
Yeah.
We've talked about AFCA, the African Free Trade Zone. Yes, you've set it up, but we actually need to make it work. It's those collaborations that will make it work. And of course, sorry, we just need to talk about, it's one thing to attract FDIs. It has to be easy for them to do business in your country. It has to be easy for them to do business. So maybe I'll stop.
Just before you continue, I really wanted to also talk about, maybe some of us are just focusing on the fact that we need fresh cash to come in. Are there other advantages that, these foreign investors come with outside fresh cash? Please, Ma, can you just talk about it? Are there other things that they come with?
The advantages of foreign investors bringing money into the country, there's transfer of knowledge, they're going to train, and of course when there's an injection of funds in the country, that means that maybe your business is going to scale, it's going to expand, there's going to be employment, and of course when they bring money into the country, they want to manage the money to ensure that there's profit, there's profit at the end of the day. They're going to transfer technical skills, managerial skills. And another thing that it does is that the advantage also is that it opens you up to, let's say, your investors. It opens you up to their contacts, their markets, and you can leverage off that. Of course, there are economies of scale. So those are a few of the advantages.
Thank you very much, man. Do you want to talk about the doctor?
All right, let me just say a few things. Primarily because I have been involved in an FDI company, and I sit on the board. And I'm a little bit concerned. There are three things that worries me. The first one is what I call the sanctity of contracts. That's something that the government must, honestly speaking, close their eyes, everything. When you sign, you sign. And it's like casting concrete.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you're already losing more than half of the FDIs that will flow in. That's one. The second one is even worse. Yes, you talk about managing the company, making profit, but that's halfway. The real problem is repatriating that money. So
Yeah.
if, for instance, you make money, why did you think ShopRite left? Why do you think they sanctioned MTN at the point? Why do you think there's so many things? A lot of foreign companies that have invested, they have lots of naira.
Yeah.
They cannot repatriate, so you declare dividend. And it's a normal practice. Okay, I have dividend. I keep some, retain it in the business, and then I want to. And these guys may even have loans that they are servicing and all of that. They can't because the money is trash. That's the second one. And then I want to talk about the free trade zone. I laugh. I laugh because, first of all, we are late coming to the party.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we are not even behaving as if we are already inside the party. You can come late, but as soon as you come late, where are they serving food? Quickly get your food, sit down, dance. You know, we're not even, as in we're still at the door, and we're just looking what is happening. Let me tell you, you see this thing about the Dangote release, there was one video, and I don't know how many of you saw it, that as big as he is, he's not able to move goods across easily.
Yeah.
How can you be telling me? In fact, the one that was so funny was that he said he's one of the 3 or 4 people that they have given African Union passport. Now, and that when he tried to use it, that in fact they have to give him, I think, visa on arrival on that one. Inside Africa, there are certain things. By now, we should have an east-west, north-south rail going across the entire continent. I was in Côte d'Ivoire. And Côte d'Ivoire is just how many hours you reach Ghana? How many hours you reach? Can you imagine if a rail is running across West Africa, how tourism will blossom, how a trade will blossom, how so many things will blossom. But guess what? I had to fly to Paris, to fly to one country in West Africa. What's the name of that country? I can't even remember. That was the easiest way for me, because otherwise I would have to go to Senegal and stay in Senegal overnight before I could fly to that place. And we are both in West Africa. How can you talk about trade within us? There are many issues still outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do you want to add a little bit, because it's a vital point?
Yes, I was just going to add that foreign direct investment also involves companies, large companies also coming to Nigeria and setting up themselves and having an arm or a branch in Nigeria. It's just recent you're seeing, in the last few years, you've seen on that stretch where the other one, Alfred Rouhani, you see Microsoft, you see Google, you see everybody just left, right, all over the place. That's very recent. Some are still jittery. Why don't we have Amazon? It's the big logistics tech company. There's still many companies that are, afraid due to this issue of capital flight. How would they get their funds back, back to their countries? So it's very important that we foreign direct investment, we note that it's not just about funding entrepreneurs. It creates jobs for the economy as well. It opens up our economies to a lot of skills, talent, that training, that people need to really embrace. So we do hope and we pray that whatever the government is doing now, they continue in it. And we as citizens as well, and entrepreneurs and startups, continue to do our best, our level best, in ensuring whatever we can contribute to the economy, we do it, and we do it well. We embrace these corporate governance structures such that we don't give the country a bad name. I saw a news just last week about this investor, VC firms that invested in this tech company in Nigeria. I was ashamed when I saw it. Now the EFCC is trying to help them investigate because the person had laundered the money and all of that. These are some of the things that, create a bad name for us. So these are some of the things we as entrepreneurs, startup companies need to avoid.
Thank you very, very, very much. I hope we are writing down, and I also hope we are also preparing our questions in case if you have any question that directly affects your business. Our speakers are very experienced to help with those questions. So let's look at sustainability. Doctor, you need to help us on this sustainability. We've gotten the foreign direct investment. They are here. They are with us. We have good corporate governance. How do we sustain how do we sustain our business? How do we keep maintaining this governance and then being a good example for more people to come and leverage on the potential we have in this continent?
Okay, so you see, we need to, first of all, everybody must behave. For me, it's about attitude. It's about understanding that when you do things right, you are better off in the long run. That's the long and short. In the short run, maybe it's a little bit difficult or whatever, but in the long run, you are better off. There is this thing I used to say about doing the correct thing. People say birds of the same feather, they flock together.
They flock together.
So I asked them in my class, I said, if there is a corrupt person that comes and the person is offering you the two bankers, sorry, madam, two bankers, and one is a corrupt banker like you, and the other one is a straightforward, trustworthy person. And you have stolen. This one says, the corrupt one says, I'm going to give you 100% of your money at the end of the year. This guy says, I'm only going to give you 10% of your money at the end of the year. Where will you put your money? And almost all of them will go for the 10%.
10%.
Why? Because they trust that person. Now, sustainability of any business or anything that you are doing usually is hinged on trust and integrity. And that is, once you have that, and when you now put corporate governance into context, people are transparent. If you need to increase somebody's salary, transparently, you will increase it. If you need to do it, everybody sees it. There is no, under the table, there is nothing. And because of that, you also know that if this money I'm paying this person cannot sustain this person, then you are supposed to pay the person the correct money.
Correct.
Once you have done all of that, if it means your business cannot then make enough profit, you have to change your business model to make sure that it's able to do well and all of that. But you cannot run away from best practices, doing things properly. That's the only way that things can be sustainable. Honestly speaking, in fact, in the last, I think 5, maybe 7 years now, we've been hearing a lot now about ESG.
Yeah.
Now, we've been focusing a lot on the G.
On the G, yeah.
Now, we are focusing on the E.
On the E.
But that ES is very critical. Right from day one, as you start your business, you must say to yourself, how do I remain sustainable?
Yeah.
I see this problem with a lot of NGOs. They are busy doing projects, and then the thing dries up. But if from day one, you have started thinking of sustainability of the organization, it's very easy. A lot of stuff will come in. And so with foreign direct investment, it's even very interesting because they will begin to expose you to new markets.
Yeah.
Let me give you one example. This free continental free trade zone. As a multinational or as a foreign direct investment, I already know that the biggest market I have is in West Africa. Yeah. Then I said to myself, I'm going to go to where the market will receive me, the country will receive me best. From that place, I can service everywhere instead of bringing my goods or whatever from America or from Europe. And so it means that my go-to, my customer is short time. My turnaround is very fast. That is part of that sustainability thing that foreign FDI brings to the table beyond the money.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything they want to add?
Dr. Peter has said it all.
Okay.
I will still refer back to the same analogy of the cat and the mice, because with sustainability, once you have put all these things in place, things even like as little or trivial some people see succession planning as, if you don't do things like that, your business won't last. you know. So it's very important that things like that are put in place. And we also need to be very cautious, especially in Nigeria, even African countries. We don't have transgenerational businesses. How many can you count? Like right now, just let it roll off your tongue. That has been when our not grandfathers, our great grandfathers were alive. How many businesses? Maybe just a mentor of mine, Pastor Kolaye, was telling me that he was doing some research on this, and he said, look, there are just a handful of transgenerational businesses. You know, we all know Colgate. Colgate was a family business, and Colgate has become a worldwide brand now. But it was passed on from generations to generations to generations, and the name Colgate was a family name. It remains. The name Cadbury is a family name, and in fact, Cadbury, Sir Adrian Cadbury, was one of the corporate governance geniuses. You know, he brought about the Cadbury report and laid out the first set of principles that corporate governance sort of stood on in the UK then, before different countries started to, you know, apply their own corporate governance structures. But
thank you,
really, it's important that we embrace all these things so that we have sustainable businesses.
Thank you. Because of time, I don't know whether we'll have any questions from the audience. Yes, please. So just tell us your name and then.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much to the very esteemed panel. It's been very insightful. My name is Adekola Thompson. I'm a lawyer by profession. Okay, sorry. And yes, my question is this. Knowledge is built based on little blocks from the time we're children to when we're adults. Now, I believe that if Nigeria, and especially Africa as a whole, if we're going to see that future that we so dream of, we need to begin to teach the next generation these foundational building blocks of corporate governance. Now, I mean, it may sound funny, but an idea just crossed my mind about a children's book that's based on corporate governance, but it's a children's book and you're teaching them stories. These are the things that I believe are going to move or give us that reality we so seek. But how do we begin to influence educational policies to that, in that regard, such that we're not found wanting or slipping when the time comes and the opportunities present themselves and a generation doesn't know how to leverage them?
Okay, so what you're saying is, so how do we incorporate good corporate governance in our curriculum?
Education, yes.
As little as primary, secondary
school? Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm sure doctor is in education. Listen, doctor can tell us more.
Okay, so thank you very much, Adekola. This is very interesting. Right now, it is being done extracurricular.
Yeah.
And I think what you are suggesting is it has to go into mainstream. Yes. Now, we have that opportunity, and hopefully we are all going to take care of it. When I say extracurricular, so we have organizations like Junior Achievement. They run company stuff in secondary schools. I think now they go to primary schools, and they teach them all of this. But like I said, it's extracurricular. Now, what in the last 10 years or so, at the tertiary level, they have also introduced that through the NUC. But then, that's tertiary. So we now need to begin to cascade it down. This is very interesting. I do some work with the Ministry of Environment, Education in Lagos. I chair the Comprehensive Schools program. So one of the things that I'm going to suggest to them is precisely that let us try it and let's start from that level. Interestingly, just like language, when you teach children 5 languages at age 4, they will pick all.
Yeah.
So the same way we need to do it. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And it's also very interesting to note, Society of Corporate Governance Nigeria is just something that the society will also look at how to collaborate with schools to promote, that awareness, because it's very important. Thank you so much. Thank you. we'll just take maybe one more question.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank
this.
you.
Of course, it was an eye opener, very insightful for me, and I'm really grateful to myself that I came in here. Exactly. So another thing I also wanted to point out was for the education aspect, the Constitution, because I just came out from another section exactly, and it's surprising because most Nigerians don't even know the Constitution. So I'm also suggesting, sir, since you're in this field of education, that if with this going to be cascaded down, I think the Constitution should also be incorporated into the syllables or curriculum. I don't know how it's going to be maybe abridged, but I think if we can start it from there, the Nigerian child will get a little bit of understanding of what it is before, because it's amazing that even as adults, some of us don't even know. You just mentioned Startup Act and Bill, October 2022, and some of the benefits. And come on, if some of us didn't come in here, we probably wouldn't have known that. So, sir, maybe this could also be looked into. Thank you very much.
Let me shock you first.
Yes, sir.
And I say let me shock you because every institution, university, whatever, they have constitution. They are guided by constitution. And we did a poll amongst our colleagues. How many of these are senior people across universities? Okay, how many of you have constitutions in your universities? Everybody raise hand. How many of you have read, that you have it and you have read your constitution? This is where they work, where they eat. This is, you are now Nigeria. But I do get your point. I think part of the challenge is that I believe we have removed civic education from the curriculum. We need to go back to history, to civic education. These are the two things. And then I think at the third level, they say government, something like that. Yeah. If we can bring those ones back, so whether you are doing engineering, medicine, whatever you are doing, classic, you will be able to know. And you see, there is something about your heart being with your country. When your heart is with your country, a lot of things you are going to know. But when your heart is not with your country, you not even care. How many? Oh, you are talking about constitution. National anthem. How many people?
Thank you.
Pledge. How many people? This is key issue. It's very important.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. So, okay. I think that will be our last question because of time.
Good afternoon. My name is Olale Oladimeji. I'm a lawyer and also a founding member of the Corporate Governance Committee of the MBA SBL.
Okay.
Thank you so much for some of the submissions that you made. I found them quite useful and quite informative. And something that always been burning in my mind, right? And from my research and outlook just across board in the industry, right? A major issue is the fact that most business founders, they don't even understand what the principles of corporate governance are, what are required of them. I mean, we found this across board in various industries. One of the areas where I'm able to practice presently is technology and blockchain area. Okay. Now, there has been some scandal rocking that space, right, with FTX and all of that. Yeah. And what I found was it was an absolute lack of corporate governance controls and structures in place. I mean, going through everything, I mean, it was just that the root of everything, billions were missing. We're hearing things about, management had, there was a backdoor where you could probably make payment to somewhere without probably triggering the internal system. You would have revelations about probably they had a group where probably they called it, I've forgotten the name, but it was something more like just fraud group. How would you, internal employees, you don't even have like an audited statement, that you present to your investors and that kind of things. Due diligence, those kind of things are concerns. Now, a major thing that we should be looking at is education for these founders. So what I want to suggest, at this point, because if we don't even have this in the traditional system, So far, are we even going on to say for an industry that is decentralized, where we're saying there is little control that the government has in terms of regulation right now, because they're still even trying to understand it, understand the concept of ownership. That's really what it gives, right, when it comes to decentralization. So in the traditional space, we don't even have, the implementation of this, because a lot of the stringent requirements
Let's hear your contribution. You know you're a lawyer.
yes, yes. So I'm trying to narrow it down. So the stringent requirements are more for, maybe financial institutions, the listed companies, and the likes. The other ones are more like optional, but at least there are those parts where you're required under the law. Can we have a kind of collaborative effort? I know the MBSBL did that. I'll mention what they did, but a collaborative effort where we are able to have, probably from the fact that you're trying to explore the position of you incorporating in a company, maybe the CAC would, when they mail you your MEMAT, your memorandum and articles, and your certificate, they send you probably like an info deck that gives you insight on what is required of you as a standard. I mean, we have this in so many other countries, right? Delaware and all that, where you're registered.
Okay, so
All right, time up. So that is basically what I would just suggest. So I think I'll just drop it here.
Okay. Thank you very much. So what I would say to you and to many people who are here, it would be nice that we sign up with the society. Very nice because the society has a lot of programs they do to encourage startups and then pass that required knowledge. So the gentleman that has spoken there, please, we will need you as well to help us to pass those links from the society to the legal association of Nigeria. So we will need that level of collaboration. So thank you so much, my speakers. I don't know, but even me that is sitting here, I think I've learned a whole lot. Thanks for taking our time to come and speak to us. Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thanks a lot for coming for this section. Thank you and see you. Bye.
Thank, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. On behalf of the board and management of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria, I wish to sincerely appreciate you all for your time and for impacting us this afternoon. Really appreciate. And for our audience present, we thank you for attending this session, and I'm sure it was an insightful one for you. And for those online, because we have some of our participants online, I know there's a question we're unable to answer. I don't know if you want to just throw one light, just more light on that question. It says, what are some of the due diligence questions you would ask to fund a startup? Although, just 1 minute, just.
Yes.
Okay, there's so many questions. However, one of the things that I'll be asking a startup first off is, various VCs look at different things. I want to see your team. I want to know those who are on your team.
Yeah.
And it's like, show me your friend and I'll know who you are type of thing. So I would look at your team. I would also look at what you have done so far, right? Is there anything in particular I can see that gives me an indication that you've done something, that you've given? Because you can't just come to me without showing me anything at all. There has to be something I can lay my, and then you as a person. A lot of people invest in people that they have a connection with and they like. So you yourself have to be credible, right? So aside your team, aside yourself, you should have at least put together basic information about your company that they can look up. And as we're saying about corporate governance as well, what structure do you have in place right now? Anybody who wants to invest in you wants to know, are you registered already? You are registered as what? Is it a sole proprietorship? Are you a partnership? Are you a limited company? What structure to enhance your tax situation, right? Those are the sort of things that I can look at, but that's just brief. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just want to quickly add just one word, competence. Yes, you look at your team, but what's the competence of your team? What are their skill set? So that's something that's very key as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the response. I also want to extend our deep appreciation to Africa Nest for giving us this platform. And we hope to have more collaborations with them, and we sincerely appreciate them. Thank you so much for coming. We would also like to share some awards for our speakers. Sorry, can we have, thank you.
Okay, first on our list is Dr. Peter Bamkole. He's on there. On behalf of the board and management, we deeply appreciate your support towards the corporate governance course. And we thank you for coming. Thank you so much, sir. Please, a round of applause for him. Thank you. Also, we have Mrs. Kemi Adewale. Ma, we thank you so much for your time and your support. Mrs. Victoria Ajayi. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the time. Okay. The last but not the least, thank you so much, our moderator, Mr. Franklin Obika. Thank you so much, sir. All right. Thank you. That will be all for this session. Thank you for our audience. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Have a pleasant day ahead.